Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, have you ever seen roses last as long as these have? I mean, is it just not amazing? They're just wonderful. I cannot thank Teresa enough for them. Just amazing. Well, I'm going to plunge in with what Little P has to say. I think someone in the palace put that out there. That is the announcement of the surrogacy, as they knew something was up and nobody was addressing it. So they figured, let's put that out there and have people think about the inconsistency about the birth of Archie. And I'm going to read out what Annette Daw says, and then answer both at once, because this is a subject of some considerable significance, because one way it's appalling, and another way it's equally appalling, because it's absolutely appalling that Harry and Meghan would allow this speculation to continue and ignore it and not address it, not only in terms of them as parents, but in terms of them as members of the British royal family, no matter how disjointed. They have a duty not only to the British people and to the British state and to his family, but they also have a duty to themselves and to their children. So if this is all pie in the sky, yes, it's causing controversy. Yes, it's getting Meghan the publicity that she hungers for. And yes, it's absolutely appalling that she allows this to continue. It shows a total lack of conscience, scruple, and responsibility insofar as I am concerned. Now, if the alternative is the reality, then we can well understand why they are silent, which makes it even more appalling, because the ramifications of that are so considerable. But so this is something that is on the boil, not only in terms of comment publicly, but behind the scenes privately. More than that I cannot say. Annette Daw says, whoever put the tweet online knew that it was going to be the day of the birth. According to Spare, Meghan had not gone into labour at the time of the tweet. We only have screenshots of it. Let's remember that. Now, that's me answering. That's not them. We have only screenshots. We don't have the original, because if it took place in the time that it is supposed to have been posted, which I think was something like 3 a.m. in the morning, I mean, I have a screenshot of it as well. I haven't seen it for ages, but it was posted at an ungodly hour. And yes, if it had been a genuine post, that means it was preemptive, because it actually was posted before the birth that we have been told. Let me rephrase that. It was posted in anticipation of the birth of the child. But The whole thing could have been fabricated. It might never have been posted at the time that the post states it was posted. Or it could have been posted and then taken down. We'll never know for sure unless the palace states one way or the other that it was put up on their site or wasn't. Interestingly enough, when I spoke about this and brought it up to one of Her late Majesty's senior courtiers, because I was acting on behalf of the public who had been asking me to ask questions, which I did. He did not deny that it had appeared on the site, though he did dismiss it as having not originated from a palace source. So his implication was that it was a hack. But I have to say that my experience of dealing with the palace functionaries is that they can be very vague, and they're really not always on the ball the way so many other people are. I mean, if they were in business in the United States of America in the days when I knew America, I can tell you they'd have been pitched out. In fact, I did tell this senior courtier once, because of something that I said, I've got news for you. If you worked at Castle Goring, you would have been out on your air a long time ago. I said, I've never seen such incompetence in my life. So I make all of those points because we have only screenshots of it. So we don't really know if it was faked after the fact and then promoted as if it had been posted at, I think it would have been 6 a.m. 3 a.m. or whenever it was, on the 6th of May, 2019. I don't know. It's a grey area, let us put it that way. But he certainly was categoric that the palace didn't post it. So basically it's a fake, was his point. And of course, to an extent as well, the palace is often vague because they don't want to be nailed down for practically anything of any momentousness. So, which is a very good technique to actually retain some degree of control of a situation that really is getting out of hand. Teacup Demitas says, I was there in real time. That surrogate tweet never came live on the KP accounts. What you see and what everybody else saw was merely a screenshot. Anyone can fabricate a fake screenshot. Believe me, if that was live, all of us would have seen it for ourselves, and other screenshots would have been taken to support the fact that it happened. Unfortunately, it didn't. That's a very important point to make. And I have read it out because I agree with Demitas. Teacup Demitas. And it could have been put up by someone who genuinely believes that a fast one was pulled on everybody and wanted to open up the question for some answers. I think that is a definite possibility, and we need to bear that in mind. Of course, one or two people have actually suggested that Meghan herself could have got somebody to put it up. Could she be so diabolically Machiavellian that she would have done that? Well, I think we only need to look at her track record to understand why that question has been asked. But she would have to be so much more overconfident than I already think she is to have flown so close to the sun, Icarus-like, thinking there was no way she'd singe those wings of hers to do that. That would be, brazenness that was beyond the comprehension. But then Meghan has shown us time and again that she is a brazen beyond comprehension. Look, for instance, at her recent Instagram post of all of the vegetables that she has just picked from her garden. You know, the ones where she's showing her feet as well. And there are all those vegetables, some in season, some out of season. Earthbound vegetables, not one of which has one drop of earth on them, but she's just plucked them out of the soil. To such an extent that one of the journalists in the United Kingdom has asked, is Meghan doing this deliberately? Is she actually taking the mickey out of the public? And is she doing this deliberately, knowing that it will instigate response and negative response? Could she be so provocative? That would be a sign of true evil, true psychopathy, and would show that we are dealing with a fully blown psychopath, if that were the case. As indeed, if it were the case that Meghan herself or someone that she knew had, and that her instigation had posted that surrogacy claim. So I think we need to keep this in its proper place, which, as with so much, rarely requires to be filed under the question box symbol. OKOZEF5 says some of these names. Of course, the palace knew Rachel had baby bumps strewn all about. It would have been impossible for staff to clean up after Henry and Rach without seeing them. Now, clearly, this is somebody who has never had staff and has never lived with staff and has a wealth of false assumptions to make about how people with staff function and the access that staff always are supposed to have, and the really fluidity that staff and employer would have. This is totally not so. Take it from me. I was born into a world with nothing but staff. It's rubbish to actually think that. But I'm going to show you that I'm not unique in coming to this conclusion, because MBD says, why would they? Because she's actually, he's answering the question directly that was asked, or the observation really. It's not a question, it's an observation that the palace knew. And also, may I make the point that Meghan and Harry, when you say were living in the palace, Kensington Palace is a complex of various apartments, various cottages, various houses. It's a village that's called Kensington Palace. In much the same way that people might think on a much reduced scale that I always know what's going on in the castle or even with my children. I make the point to people. I live so far away from my children that it would be as if we were on a street and I'm number 1 and then number 15. Because that is actually the minimal distance between me and them. And if you compound that and multiply it by the factor of several to get to Kensington Palace. I mean, anybody who's been to Kensington Palace knows it's a total maze. I mean, it really is its own village. So to think that because you live in a palace, it's going to be crawling with servants and everybody's going to know what you're up to is totally, totally fallacious. So MBD says, why would they? Each member of the royal family has their own home, family, and household. They each have their own offices and busy work schedules and meet each other occasionally. How exactly would you expect them to be keeping track of and observing Meghan Markle's pregnancy on a daily basis? And why would they have done so? Would you follow your pregnant family members around every day to watch their bumps? The royal family wasn't psychic. I couldn't agree with this more. And I've read it out because it absolutely encapsulates my sentiments exactly. And EVN Fred says, Meghan's huge stomach, the size she showed would have given her terrible backache and trouble getting up from a chair or sofa. Yet she never has complained of such problems, and I am sure she would tell us the thread through the needle details of late pregnancy. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. It would have been physically impossible for Meghan Markle at the size she was at 7 or 8 or 9 months pregnant to be getting down on her haunches with her knees together and bouncing back up when, as she has pointed out recently in her last podcast, she had to be clutching onto Harry because she was in danger of tilting forward because of the weight of the baby. However, there, for all to see, is video footage of Meghan Markle down as if she is a yogi, down on her haunches, sailing back up, bouncing back up, as if she's one of the balls that Harry flicks around. And Harry, in one of the shots, is standing right by her and doesn't even try to help her either down or up. Sorry, none of it has any credibility, and she has no credence as a result of it. If she can explain to us how she did it, then maybe. But until then, I have to say, anybody who isn't skeptical is stupid. Francesca Rose says, in all honesty, Lady C, nobody could believe that someone who had attached herself to our royal family could actually fake a pregnancy and get away with it. To try to dupe not only the royal family but the public at large, that would actually be astonishing. if Harry's wife definitely pretended to be pregnant when she was not, that would show that she is extremely nasty and duplicitous. That's putting it mildly, my dear. I can believe that the royal family could not comprehend that Henry and his wife would fake a pregnancy. Couldn't agree more. I couldn't comprehend that it could actually have been possible. What kind of mind would think that this type of behavior is acceptable? I feel very sorry for the royal family having to cope with a woman who, in my opinion, is evil. Well, if she had done it, and if she did it, and if she thought she could get away with it, that would show that the woman is insanely psychopathic, insanely arrogant, insanely reckless, insanely, well, I can go on and on. I don't think I need to go on and on. Notice, insanely comes before it all. That, to me, would be a sign of not only total psychopathy, not even sociopathy, psychopathy. I mean, the words are often interchangeably used, but the fact of the matter is that sociopaths function within the law and psychopaths don't care about the law and function outside of the law. That's one of the distinctions that is sometimes made about psychopaths and sociopaths. And anybody who would have the unmitigated gall to enter into one of the world's leading families and fake a pregnancy and flaunt an artificial bump around and think that she could get away with it with alacrity, impunity, and that nobody would ever be able to discern what she was, the fraudulence that she was up to, would without a doubt be so totally beyond the pale in terms of what was acceptable behavior and what wasn't. It would be inexcusable under all circumstances. Obviously, no sane person or no reasonable person, and certainly no decent person, could ever imagine that somebody who was closely related to or involved with them could pull such a grotesque stunt so publicly and expect to get away with it. You'd have to be mad yourself. You too would have to be insane. You too would actually have to be totally unscrupulous. You too would have to be totally destructive. You too would actually have to be evil to actually even consider the possibility that such an eventuality could take place until after it had been brought to your attention that the crook was scamming you. Until that happened, you would really have to have a crooked mentality to even think that such an eventuality could be possible. So this is my take on the whole situation. I happen to know about personality types that are so arrogant, egotistical, delusional, power crazed, and narcissistic and sociopathic, and Machiavellian that they would do something like that. Because I have been the victim of people who have pulled not stunts like that, but other stunts. And I have to tell you, nobody could ever accuse me of either being naive or a fool. But it's very easy, unless you are as unscrupulous as people like that, to actually anticipate or even believe what they can come up with until after they have come up with it. That's the advantage that evil has over good, that destructiveness has over constructiveness, that sociopathic and psychopathic and narcissistic personalities have over healthier personalities. And not all narcissists would actually do something like that. You'd have to be a particularly nasty sort of narcissist to do it. There are many narcissists who are sufficiently decent that they wouldn't do something like that. So the royal family or any other family in a situation like that would have to be itself the proponents of disordered thinking to even consider such an eventuality until after the event itself had taken place. Lourdes Green says, Meghan has a paltry 3 million followers on Instagram. Her comment section is turned off. Meanwhile, William and Catherine have 16.8 million followers and aren't trying to sell merchandise. Very well spotted, Lourdes Green. Let me make the point. When Meghan and Harry were in the royal family, their Instagram following was similar to the Cambridges, as William and Catherine then were. William and Catherine were a little bit ahead of them, and I think at one stage Meghan and Harry pipped them slightly to the post. I don't really remember the ins and outs, but I wrote about it in my book, Meghan and Harry, the Real Story, and that Meghan wanted to break one of her instructions while she was still in the royal family to her people in California. She wanted to have the largest Instagram following in the world. She wanted to break the internet, blah, 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 blah. All very Kardashian style ambitions. Of course, the Kardashians have made a great deal of money out of all of this, and they have their followers. I have to say I'm not amongst them, but there we go. But the point is, when Meghan and Harry were in the royal family, they had maybe 4 times the followers. They lost that. Meghan's Instagram following, if my calculations and recollections are correct, accord now with what, or approximate if they don't accord, with what Meghan's following was when she had the TIG. Now, Meghan has been known to have bought in followers to both the TIG and to her Instagrams. She didn't need to buy in followers when she was in the royal family, and I think they were Sussex royal, or anyway, whatever they were. I'm not technically as proficient, so I won't even mention the names. But whatever they were, that's she didn't need to fake that. But there are strong suspicions, and I put it that way for legal reasons, that, or I'll rephrase that, the information I have received from people who have expertise in this subject is that Meghan Markle has bought in followers to pump up the numbers in her present Instagram. So 3 million is still a quarter of what she got when she was in the royal family with Harry. Now, the fact of the matter is, what this shows is that Meghan Markle on her own is back to where she started. Meghan Markle on her own doesn't have the pulling power that she had in unison with Harry when they were in the royal fold. So Meghan Markle is right, she's back where she started, and she is tigging it again. And what she and Harry both thought was that, and he said it, how she did being royal better than the royals themselves, and how fabulous they were and how the royals were so jealous of them. And as soon as people tell you everybody's jealous of them, you know that they're suffering from paranoia and narcissistic projection, because nobody's more envious than a narcissist. And the fact of the matter is that what Harry has done is, by saying what he did, he has shown us, and he's really shone a light on the fact that they thought it was all about them and how wonderful they are, that they are the great stars, and that Meghan did everything so fabulously, and Harry and Meghan were the hot super couple of royalty, and it was because of their innate talents and abilities, and that they, as personalities and characters, had such appeal that everybody would bow down and worship at their altar, to such an extent that it was safe for them to make the transition and make the move from the United Kingdom to the United States, to milk the royal cow and bottle that milk until they were billionaires. And it hasn't worked, because it was never about how wonderful and appealing and likable and lovable, and how everybody adored Meghan and Harry as individuals, shorn of their royal mantle. They have shorn themselves of their royal mantle, and having shared it off, they have discovered that, in fact, it's the royal mantle that made them as special as they thought they themselves were. So if you look at it from that point of view, it's reductive. And she is back to having to buy followers to present a facade of greater success than she actually possesses. So Catherine and William, on the other hand, hawking their wares, they're not selling themselves, they're not saying, look how wonderful we are as individuals. What their message is, and this is why people like them, is we are ciphers for doing service for you. We are the royal ciphers that will serve you in our capacity as Prince and Princess of Wales. And people appreciate the fact that they make the effort to dress well, to be presentable, to be charming, to be pleasant, and to be natural. While Meghan and Harry, look how fabulous I am. Oh, I'm the son of a king. I deserve everything. Doria, including superb weed. Ayawushka, Ayawushka, Ayawushka. It's an absolutely fantastic lesson in when egotists run with their inflated opinion of themselves and the bright light of recognition is shone upon the paucity of their appeal. That's what this is all about. It's a fascinating instruction in how reductive egotism can end up being. Ms. Sparkles and Glitter says, I would hope that part of the reason Hollywood has so strongly rejected the cable actress, beside her being box office poison and talentless, is that many in Hollywood find it absolutely revolting how she has treated her father. Thomas Markle Sr. achieved far greater success in the television industry than his treacherous daughter ever did. Absolutely right. However, let's not blind ourselves to the fact that Hollywood is the narcissism capital of the universe, not only the world. And if Meghan had been talented and if Meghan had had pulling power, they would have put their scruples to one side. But it's when it became apparent that Meghan doesn't have pulling power, she doesn't have the ability to convert her rampant egotism into bucks for them. And that's what has made them aware of the fact that actually we need to remember that her father, now 102, I have to say, let me finish this all, that her father was somebody who was respected within the industry and who was respected not only for his abilities as a lighting director, but also as a decent person who was kind and would go the extra mile for people and who was a pleasure to deal with. He wasn't arrogant and impertinent the way his uppity daughter is and has always been. Now, to give George Clooney his due, my understanding is that when he realized that Meghan was Thomas Markle's daughter and that she was doing the dirty on him, Thomas Markle, George Clooney had the decency to pull back. He realized at that point, I am told, this woman is really something else. And he went with his principles. That doesn't surprise me, because both George and Amal Clooney are very principled people. Whether you agree with their beliefs or not and what they represent is quite beside the point. They are both genuinely principled. And he certainly, to the best of my knowledge, absolutely withdrew from Meghan because once he realized who her father was and what she'd done to her father. So some people did, but all of them don't believe that for a second. Hollywood is full of people who are your best friend when they think they can make money out of you or are making money out of you. And as soon as they realize that they can't, it's as if you don't exist. Maria Elizabeth Langens says, Dear Lady C, you are right. Print media are in great trouble. Even top magazines struggle. I used to work in this industry, and believe me, I am lucky to be retired. Love from Germany. Okay, Elizabeth, not Elizabeth. Sorry. Oh, The print media are in huge difficulty all over the world. And you're right, including the top magazines. Vanity Fair is a fraction of what it used to be in terms of pulling power or money making, and all of the other magazines are struggling. And that accounts for the terror and the various resourceful money cutting and attempts to make money that the managements of these companies and these magazine companies are about, because they are scrambling to earn the money that they once earned, and they're not earning it. And they are scrambling to try to find solutions to the problem. Now, this is not particularly unique if you are somebody who's interested in history. When we had an agricultural economy and land was at a premium, people who had a lot of land were very rich. When the world started to move from an agrarian economy to an industrialized economy, industrialists started to flourish, and agrarian people started to suffer. And in the mid to late 19th century, there were huge problems with the great estates, because an agricultural wealth was no longer what it had once been. Now industrial wealth was. Nowadays, then you had in the 20th century, you had the great publishers, the great press barons who were swimming in money. That no longer, as a result of the internet, exists. They are all struggling. Now, I'm not saying some of them are not still rich, but relative to what they were, they are like great landowners at the beginning of the 19th century and at the end of the 19th century. The difference is huge. And the same thing is happening within the print media. It's a huge problem. And what it means is that they are all scrambling for ads, because the whole thing is based upon people who avail themselves of their product, whether it's buying a newspaper, buying a magazine, reading it online. It's all funded by advertisement. And because the internet is a relatively new phenomenon, it has taken time for them to find their footing. They're finding it, but it's not ground that's been well covered, and it's not solid ground yet. And this is important because it leads on to the last topic of the day, which we will start with what Talk for UK says. Jean-Paul Guerlain's son's behaviour is a disgrace. Does France have no care for their elderly? The short answer is not much. Sorry. People are constantly saying to me that the way the French treat their elderly is an absolute disgrace. It has to be said, not all French people are like that. When we had our chateau in the south of France, southwest of France, one of the farmers' families, because we had a domain that had been broken up into various farms, and we owned the chateau and the park, and the Canivanks who were the farmers immediately beside us and surrounding us. Wonderful, wonderful family. And their parents, who were primarily Occitan speakers, not French speakers, Occitan speakers, they're still alive. They must be batting 200 now. And they were treated with great reverence and respect. But an awful lot of people in France, rich people especially, want to park their relations as quickly as possible, because Code Napoleon means that unless you can cut someone out of an inheritance when you are compos mentis, once you cease to be compos mentis, they can't cut you out. And under Code Napoleon, they have to inherit according to the code. Code Napoleon prevents people from writing wills that will disinherit members of their family. A friend of mine who is a leading judge in France says that Napoleon did this because Napoleon was intent on breaking up all of the great estates and great families so that only the Bonaparte dynasty would be a premier family. And to an extent, he succeeded. But Code Napoleon still exists. And Stefan Guerlain knows that he just needs to wait. And in the meantime, he is punishing his father. He is punishing his father because his parents were divorced when he was a little boy, and his father had a series of beautiful women with whom he cohabited and whom he wanted to marry. But Stefan Guerlain was so poisonous that they wouldn't marry him. And the one who wanted to marry him, and he wanted to marry, Christina, who has been with him for 20 years now, Stefan Guerlain has prevented the marriage. Why? Because even though in France you can have separation of assets, and Christina would have had separation of assets with Jean-Paul, Stefan is punishing his father. It's not only nailing the women who replaced his mother, it's punishing his father. There is a strongly punitive element to his conduct. And his behavior is, in my opinion, reprehensible. It is totally bizarre, it is extreme, it is unconscionable, and it is extremely resourceful and inventive. But ultimately, he is showing us what textbook elder abuse is, when you are a vengeful son punishing a father and punishing everybody else who is in his life. It's extremely upsetting and distressing. Many Act says, Stefan Guerlain appears to be positively evil. Everyone should never purchase a Guerlain product again. It's so sad that the authorities are allowing him to torture his father and companion. Well, he's a lawyer. He has the air of the local judiciary. And he has spun things in such a way. And he's very adept at setting up situations. He's not stupid. when you say he appears to be positively evil, he appears to be positively evil, in my opinion, as well. He certainly appears to be deliberately destructive and deliberately nasty when there's no need for it. Comes back to he's got to be working out childhood resentments, but is that somebody who should be a guardian of an older person? No, it's not. And yes, I would encourage everybody to write in to Bernard Arnault of LVMH, which now owns Guerlain, and say, unless he does something to bring this matter to a halt and to protect the interests of Jean-Paul Guerlain and Christina, that you are going to boycott not only Guerlain products, but all LVMH products. He has the ability to do something about it, but he's not doing it. And the press, the mainstream media are not picking this up because they are worried that if they go with this story and shine the light of recognition and exposure on the appalling situation that's taking place at the moment, that Bernard Arnault and LVMH will pull advertising from them. Do you see how the connection works between the mainstream media struggling and the power that the advertiser has now? Pamela Schultz says, the Guerlain situation is beyond awful, but Stefan doesn't own the horses. Christina does. Surely, even though I don't think you can legally kidnap an animal, moving an animal from one place to another without the owner's knowledge, let alone her consent, is an act of theft. Why is he not being prosecuted? Well, the gendarmerie have been called in, and in the countryside it's the gendarmerie, it's only the police in the main cities, but in the countryside it's the gendarmerie. The gendarmerie have been called in, they're investigating, they were absolutely appalled, but as I pointed out to Christina, they may be appalled in a genuine reaction, but when the powers that be from above lean on them and say, oh, well, you know, Monsieur Guerlain, da-da-da, da-da-da, Monsieur Arnault, da-da-da, da-da-da, now, you know, maybe we shouldn't make the waves, we should let the waves crash onto the shore, and we don't have anything to do with the sand on the shore. We just let it all happen. Because that's, in my experience, the likely outcome from genuine horror to nobbled disinterest and inactivity. But yes, he certainly broke the law. He certainly broke the law. Is he going to be penalized for breaking the law? That's the question. That's what we need to keep our eyes open for. And I would therefore suggest that anybody who is inspired to do so and who cares about what, in my opinion, is one of the most appalling cases of abusiveness that a son is doing to a father and his father's partner, that the only way to have any effect is to point out to Bernard Arnault, and incidentally it's Bernard Arnault, Bernard Arnault. He's the head of LVMH. He's married to the Frida Kahlo actress. Oh, what is her name? She's Mexican, very pretty girl. I can't remember her name. Very famous, but I can't remember her name. And that's the way to get some movement on this, because otherwise there's going to be none, because it's the pocket that is counting at this stage. The mainstream media aren't doing anything because they're worried Bernard Arnault will hit them in their pockets. We need to let Bernard Arnault that the public will hit him in his pocket. Then that might bestir him, because between now and then, believe me, nothing is going to. People like that dodge these bullets like you couldn't believe. They're more practiced at dodging the consequences of their actions than eels are at slithering out of situations. N. Rettig says, and we will end with this: mainstream media corporations' main income is from advertising. The papers, journals, TV programs, etc. are just the vehicles to bring consumers to advertisers. Unfortunately, the majority of the consumers of the mainstream media don't realize that they are only fed narratives the editors believe will bring more dupes to sell to advertisers, and they will never upset their milking cows for ad revenues. And advertisers are an important part of the herd. I've read this out because I have said this before. I just said it a little bit while ago, but I've been saying this for some considerable length of time in relation to the Bernard Arnault, Stefan Guerlain, Jean-Paul Guerlain, Christina situation. And I am so delighted that somebody else, N. Rettig, has said it. And thank you very much for that. And I would ask all of you to please write to Bernard Arnault. Get in touch with him. Your voice may make a difference. At least we will have tried to do the right thing. I've tried to get in touch with him. They're stonewalling me. But they can't stonewall me every time, everywhere. But they are practiced eels slithering away into profitability. But they will draw the line if their profitability is going to be threatened. So on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this is of some interest to you. If it is, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know the ground you would like me to be covering with you, really on your behalf. And I love doing it as well, I have to tell you. So thank you very much. Take good care. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and Godspeed. Bye-bye.